Hi, it's Nathan from I Need IVF. I'm here today to talk to you a little bit about embryo glue and whether it's right for you and your IVF cycle. So, what is embryo glue? It sounds a little bit science fictional, and when I first read about it, I was very, very dubious. It's one of those things that as you're going through private IVF, you might be presented with a menu of options, and embryo glue is often on there. So when I found out about it, I started doing a lot of research, and this is a little bit about what I've learned. So embryo glue has quite high concentrations of hyaluronic acid, which is a naturally occurring compound which is often found within soft tissues, including your endometrium. And some studies have found that this increases the soft tissue stickiness, how well things stick together. An embryo which is prepared in this glue, before transfer, basically, in theory, it's supposed to give it a greater chance of implantation. So, what is hyaluronic acid? Hyaluronic isn't quite the same as hyaluronic acid, although in everyday language they're often used interchangeably. The reason for this is that the polysaccharide, which is basically a combination of small molecules, is synthesized in the cells, is actually a salt rather than acid. So specifically, it's a polymer, which is a large combination, and it's a disaccharide, so it's a large combination of sugar molecules, specifically double sugar molecules. This sugar molecule can have up to 25,000 double sugar molecules, making it really, really big. So HA is currently used within cosmetics, and it's currently approved in the US for treatments with osteoarthritis of the knee via injections. So it already does have some use within the medical field, but does it actually help with implantation? This is one of the treatments that the HFEA have rated as amber, which means that there is some evidence determining that it might treatment, that it might have a positive impact, but it's currently not strong enough for them to rate it as green. So let's have a think about that research. In 2012, there was an article that came out which was titled "Embryo Glue Does Not Seem to Improve the Chances of Subsequent Pregnancy in Refractory in Vitro Fertilized Cases." That dealt quite a big blow to embryo glue. Having read the research, it sets some really interesting statistics. However, if we move a little bit closer to today, in 2007, another research article, which was a literature review by Cochrane, which are generally regarded as the gold standard within healthcare. And it was about the adherence compounds in embryo transfer media for assisted reproductive technologies. A mouthful, I know, but essentially it means embryo glue as part of the media for transferring an embryo. It looked at a number of studies and it found two specific instances. It found an increase of live births of 450 per thousand compared to 367 per thousand when people used embryo glue. On the negative side of things, it did show that there was a much higher chance of multiples, where it was about 282 per thousand versus 175 per thousand. Now, one of the things about the study is that it did show that there were some smaller studies that didn't show an increase in live birth rates, but when they took the whole of the data set, so the metadata for all of the studies that they looked at, I identified that there was a significant 10% increase in chance of birth rates. Of those studies, it indicated that one was of a high quality and the rest were of moderate quality, and that further research is needed. In theory, this embryo glue helps with 3 stages of implantation. It helps in the contact stage. So as the hatched blastocyst approaches the endometrial lining, it has a really high viscosity, which allows it to more easily mix with intrauterine fluids, and it reduces it having to move around unnecessarily. Then it helps adhere to the endometrial lining. There's antigen called CD44, which is particularly important in cell adhesion and migration. So the embryo expresses it in essence, and the endometrial cells have a receptor. So if you think about it a little bit like a lock and key, which means that they lock on. And the good thing about CD44, which is the hyaluron, it is essentially the key to that lock, so it helps them fit together. And the embryo glue has more receptors than would be naturally expressed by that embryo, which means that they're more likely to bind. And then finally, implantation. It's supposed to help with the actual cohesion between the embryo and the endometrial cell, which allows for the invasive part of the implantation to start, so for the early placenta to actually implant into the endometrial cells. So having read both those papers, I sort of currently erring on the side of caution, but I do have some hope that embryo glue is a treatment option that may show some benefit for IVF in the future. There's currently a really large trial going on through the University of Oxford, and the results of that are soon to be released. So as soon as they're released, I'll update the video and the article to reflect that. So we might have a better idea of how positive it is. So how is it used? So embryo glue, effectively, the day before transfer, the well that it's prepared in, the dish, has the embryo glue put into it. It's sat in the incubator so that it equilibrates to 37 degrees, the same temperature as the embryo medium that it's currently in. And then on the day of transfer, the embryo is actually placed within the embryo glue for a minimum of 10 minutes and up to about 4 hours. This is to ensure it's well coated around the zona, which is the external membrane of the embryo. And then a transfer syringe draws up the embryo, making sure there's no trapped air bubbles. And then the catheter, as usual, is used to insert the embryo through the cervical canal. Now, at this point, there are no specific additional risks other than the ones mentioned in the study around multiple pregnancies. So that's just something you have to keep in your mind. However, as I said, the research is still quite early. So I guess ultimately I hope this information leads you to make the right decision for you as to whether embryo glue is the right choice. I'm personally not happy overall with the regulation within the UK, especially around IVF add-ons in private clinics, and I think they need to be more tightly regulated, and they should be dictated more by medical need and necessity as opposed to a business choice. I often think that these menus read like a how much do you really want a child menu, and I think that is a little bit verging on emotional selling. However, I think the cost of embryo glue, which currently is around £120 to £180, with the moderate level of evidence that's currently out there, I actually do lean slightly towards that it would have a positive impact with minimal increase in risk. And I think it might just be worth the additional cost. Personally, if I were going to go through private IVF, which Rachel and I will likely be doing after we've had this one, I think embryo glue is one of the add-ons I would choose, coupled potentially with time-lapse imaging, and the others, which I'll talk about in later videos, I'd leave. If you found this video helpful, please give us a good like and think about subscribing. Thank you.